behind the technical language of climate change, there has been a parallel movement steadily growing. And this movement is rooted in the moral voice of the world's religions and the ethical compass of the communities, and of course, the spiritual energy of billions of believers. Over the past few years, faith voices have moved from the margins of international climate summits to being recognized as critical actors, bringing not only moral legitimacy, but also social capital and practical solutions. I will try to walk you through the engagement that has unfolded, but importantly, the institutional mechanisms that have been enabled and the lessons learned from the global climate process and the engagement of faith actors. So while faith engagement at COP started as early as the first climate COP, the real engagement began in October 2021, just before COP26 and in Glasgow, as Reverend Fletcher mentioned, the engagement of Pope Francis, peace be upon him. At the Vatican at that time, His Holiness and hosted a historic multi-faith gathering of nearly 40 religious leaders representing the world's major traditions. Together, they issued a joint appeal to world leaders ahead of COP26, calling for urgent, ambitious climate action. This meeting was more than a symbolic one or intended as a soundbite. It set a new precedent for coordinated faith engagement in climate space. It showed that faith leaders could transcend doctrinal differences to unite around the shared responsibility of caring for our common home. And importantly, it gave a moral framing to COP26, reminding negotiators that climate change is not only a scientific or political challenge, it is an ethical one. So at COP26 itself, this momentum translated into a coordinated faith presence through the gathering of faith-based organizations, which began to provide a mechanism for convening and organizing and amplifying the voices of faith communities in dialogue with governments, UN agencies, and civil society and secular organizations. So COP26 showed that it was possible, but it also expressed a challenge. Faith engagement was often fragmented with multiple initiatives competing for attention. And to address this, the Faith for Earth Coalition, with partners and other faith organizations, hosted several engagements, but created a platform for alignment and to ensure that faith-based organizations could engage more strategically with the UNFCCC processes. So by COP27 in Egypt, the coalition worked with partners to strengthen the coordination and creating spaces for faith-based organizations to meet, organize, and bring forward joint messages. The idea of a faith pavilion began to take shape there, although there was no faith pavilion in Sharm el-Sheikh. But, the idea was conceived and confirmed, and we immediately started preparing for that critical and institutional way to engaging faith organizations. So by building mechanisms for participation and summits and pavilions and declarations, the faith community was bringing to move or beginning to move from being inspirational voices to being recognized stakeholders in climate processes. The real breakthrough, I would say, was in Dubai during COP28. So for the first time ever in history of COPs, there was a dedicated faith pavilion. And it was even in the blue zone where side by side to the places of meetings of the negotiators. This was not a simple tent with speeches. It was carefully curated space where faith actors engaged directly with negotiators, ministers, and technical experts. So over the period of the 2 weeks of the COP28, the pavilion hosted more than 65 events featuring religious leaders, young activists, scientists, and policymakers. And it became a hub where faith communities presented solutions on renewable energy, food systems, sustainable finance, and climate justice. So they did not come only to shout out and say, listen to us, we're moral, we're spiritual, but also they provided solutions from communities that they have been leading and working with. Alongside the pavilion, there was also a global faith leaders summit that we have organized with our partners. And the first one, while it was at the Vatican, but this one was the biggest, and we called it the confluence of consciences that brought together high-level religious leaders, but also brought together youth movements, women movements, scientists, scholars, and as well as policy makers. The president of COP28 inaugurated it and supported it. And, it was fully endorsed by, some governments like the UK, Ireland, and Italy. The lessons we learned from Dubai were clear. It showed that when given structured access, faith communities not only inspire, but they do contribute substantively to climate discourse. So the pavilion created the legitimacy for the engagement of faith actors. Then moving into COP29 in Baku, again, the faith pavilion returned, but stronger and more strategic. And so building on the Dubai model, we hosted ministers of environment, UN leaders, indigenous voices, and youth. But even the UN itself used the pavilion for addressing scientific and policy issues. So it was an emergence of science, policy, and spirituality. We held a high-level faith leaders summit in Baku just before COP29. And again, more than 350 faith leaders from across the globe came and addressed the climate change issues. And we went even more into details of, climate finance, loss and damage, ecocide, and what have you. So it was really informative or informed discussions by faith leaders. So what have we learned from all of these the years of engagement? First, faith leaders bring a legitimacy that technical experts or politicians alone cannot. Their voices resonate with billions of followers, creating the possibility of behavior change at scale, of course. We're talking about billions. Second, the Faith Pavilion has been transformative because it created an institutional space where faith actors are not guests, but hosts. And this changes the dynamics of visibility and influence. Third, from the Vatican in 2021 to Abu Dhabi to Baku, these declarations serve as moral markers. They provide continuity across COPs and ensure faith voices are on record and aligned and cumulative. The other issue is that the architecture for coordination was important for the engagement to avoid fragmentation, and it unified, the voices in front of the UN system, which is, the COP and its structure. And the final point on that is the faith participation has worked best when it is intergenerational. And I repeat what Nuhad mentioned, including youth, but also considering important gender issues, including women leaders and multi-faith actors, embracing diversity and multi-dimensional, because interfaith collaboration is important in multilateral work and moving away from nationalism. So why this is important to the media and to the world? It's because climate change is not only a policy problem, it is a human problem. And policies can set targets, but people must live with them. And faith communities are among the few institutions that reach into every village, every city, and every corner of the globe. So by covering the role of faith at COPs, you are not simply reporting on yet another pavilion. You are telling the story of how the world's oldest institutions are adapting to the world's newest crisis. You are showing how ancient wisdom can inform modern governance. And you are amplifying the voices of communities whose spiritual convictions are driving climate action on the ground. But to make that work, we need your partnership. As members of the media, you hold extraordinary power in shaping public perception. You can help ensure that faith engagement at COPs and everywhere else during any type of crisis is a vital part of global response. So we ask you to cover the voices of faith leaders, women and youth from diverse traditions who are raising the moral case for climate action. These stories inspired trust and resonate with communities far beyond negotiating halls. And show your audiences that faith is not only about prayer or symbolism. It is about concrete action, planting trees, greening places of worship, mobilizing millions of renewable energy sources, and advocating for climate justice. And report on how the declarations are commitments issued at COPs to translate into community action in villages, towns, and cities across the globe. And faith institutions often act as the connective tissue between international policy and grassroots impacts. And just as you track governments and corporations, please do track faith communities too. Ask whether our declarations are being lived out. This strengthens credibility and ensures faith engagement contributes meaningfully to climate solutions. Your reporting can make the difference between a declaration that sits on a shelf and a message that transforms lives. So in closing, let me return to the bigger picture. When we look at the arc from the Vatican meeting in 2021 to Dubai to Baku, we see a clear trajectory. Faith voices have moved from symbolic appeals to structured, institutionalized participation. They have become recognized partners in climate processes, offering not only moral urgency, but practical solutions. But before we move into the vision to truly resonate, we need the media to be active partners. So by amplifying the faith voices and their moral and practical contributions and connecting the global declarations with local stories, you can help transform faith engagement from symbolic into a force that shapes public and policy. Your coverage can ensure that the wisdom and actions of faith communities are not overlooked, but rather recognized as central to humanity's collective response to the climate crisis.